Good morning, everyone. How's it going? We've got a new game review to talk about with y'all today, and this one is one that's pretty interesting, and I'm kind of excited to talk about because this is a weird game, okay? So today we are reviewing Zero Escape 999. So I am playing this in the repackaged, I guess we'll say remastered version on Xbox. It's currently on Xbox Game Pass, and that is how I played this. This originally released back in 2009 as a Nintendo 3DS game, okay? So I want to go ahead and set your expectations right now for we are playing a 14-year-old game that was originally released on the 3DS, okay? And I was playing it on the Xbox. In this case, I was playing it on my Xbox One X. It's the one that I have in my living room. That was just the best place to play this one. And of course, because it's a remastered version of a 14-year-old game, played great, super smooth, no loading, so that's definitely a plus for a game that's really old. Now, if you go and look for this game on Xbox or on Game Pass, it's actually packaged a little bit different. I want to say it's packaged as Zero Escape, the Nonary Games, or the Nonary Games, and then the Zero Escape series, because it's a package of two games. This one that I played, 999, and then the sequel, which I do think that after playing 999, I want to play. So, as I said, this is a weird, different, interesting game. So this game was published and developed by Spike Chunsoft. So you would probably recognize that name if you played Danganronpa games at all, which, as we've seen on here, I have reviewed all three of those, and I have some interesting thoughts. They start really good, and of course they get worse as we go. So this game released in 2009. The first Danganronpa released in 2010. So this first Zero Escape 999 actually came out before Danganronpa. And you can definitely see that this is the game where they started to kind of build out some of the ideas that they ended up implementing in the first Danganronpa. Now, this game is not quite as dark, it is not quite as filled with murder as Danganronpa is, and it's definitely a little bit different of a gameplay style. I would actually say that there's more gameplay in this game than Danganronpa. Now, not a lot, because the main way that you play this game, outside of experiencing the story, because this was on the 3DS, they have what's called a novel screen, so if you wanted to read all the text and all the dialogue as a novel, you could. Now, this being a remastered version released in the US, it is all dubbed, so we do have, voice actors for all of that. Now, I will say that when I first started the game, that was one of my initial complaints, is I don't think it's a particularly good dub. Now, as far as the translation goes, I didn't hear anything that was like, this really doesn't sound right in English, so I don't know that the translation was bad, but I don't particularly like either, I don't know if it's that I don't like the voice actors or I don't like the way the voices lined up with the characters, but it just, the second I started the game, I was just like, I don't know about this. I don't think I'm gonna like this. It does get better. The longer I played, I think I want to say I ended up putting about, we'll say 12 to 14 hours in this one. So it's not too bad. It's not too long. It's about the same amount of time as you'd play one of the Danganronpa games. But as I played longer, it started to get less grating. I didn't notice it sticking out like a sore thumb like when the game originally started. So I don't know if that's just, immersion therapy or if it actually gets better, but just keep that in mind, right? Okay, so going back to talking about the comparisons between it and Danganronpa. So it's not quite as dark. The gameplay is interesting. It's a lot more like a room escape game style puzzles. So as you're going throughout the area that you're in, so you're on this big ship, you and 9 other people. So the reason it's called 999 is I want to say that it's 9 persons, 9 hours, and 9 numbers, or something like that. It's all based on the number 9, which is a big deal, which is another part of the gameplay of this game. So as I said, most of what you're doing is room escape style puzzles, but most of those puzzles are kind of math-based. And this game just did some really odd, interesting things I've never seen games do before. So like, your main puzzle mechanic is finding one of your main puzzle mechanics is finding the digital root of numbers, which is basically, if you add up numbers and their number adds up greater to 10, then you take the number that they added up to and then add the digits of each of those together. Okay, so that was a mouthful, alright? So basically, let's say you did 4 plus 5 plus 6, okay? That would give you 4 plus 5 is 9, plus 6 is 15. But then what you would do, because that number was greater than 10, you would say 1 plus 5 equals 6, and so your digital root is 6, and 6 is the number that you would actually use. That is a surprisingly big piece of this game. My girlfriend was watching me play, she's like, that is way too much math for me. You did not tell me this was a math game. And I was like, Why the fuck would I think that a Danganronpa a developer-created game was going to have a math game? And it's not a math game, but it does kind of feel like a math game at times. Really interesting, really different. I enjoyed that piece of it for the most part. The other really interesting piece of this game, so part of the story is 9 years, there's the number 9 again, 9 years before when our story takes place, a bunch of kids were kidnapped and taken on this ship for a scientific experiment. They were kidnapped by a company called Cradle Pharmaceuticals, and they were performing these experiments on them to try to figure out basically telepathy, or like see if, these kids that they kidnapped could talk to people, with their minds, how telepathy works, right? And so that's another odd part of this game, is that they go into, they actually tell you, you learn about a lot of, old scientific experiments testing out telepathy. And that's, a big part of the game, is figuring out, A, how that ties into the story, but also, there'll be, 5 or 10 minutes of dialogue of one of the characters just explaining to you about these experiments, trying to figure out how telepathy worked. That's really different. You don't get that in a lot of games. And I actually, it's somewhat endearing. There are times where I was like, okay, this is droning on a little, Tom. But there are other times where it's I really appreciate the effort that was put into this game to try to get here, right? And, yes, this game is not as violent as Danganronpa. That's not to say there's not murders that take place. And so, all 9 of your characters, they show up on this ship. No one knows why, no one knows how, everyone got knocked out, and they just wake up on it. And then everyone comes together, and they're like, okay, what do we have to do? And that's when it comes on, this is the Nonary game. And it basically explains that there are 9 people, and that there are these doors that you have to get through. The only way that you can get through a door is, depending on what number you have on your wrist, if you're 1 through 9, those people's digital root, so you choose a subset of the people, their digital root, when you add their bracelets together, has to equal up to the number on the door, and then you can go through the door. There's the math again. If you then get through the door and you don't turn off the detonator, then you'll blow up. There's a bomb in your stomach. Of course, there's a bomb in your stomach. Why wouldn't there be a bomb in your stomach, right? So, yes, it is still violent. It's just not as overly dark and violent the same way Danganronpa was. The story is interesting. One of the things that this game also does is it has branching paths. Now, I want to be careful when I say that, because I don't want you to get the wrong idea. It's not branching paths in the same vein as, think Mass Effect, right? This isn't you were mean to somebody, so you're taking the renegade path, and so, if you do enough mean things, you're a renegade, or if you do enough nice things, you're a paragon. That's not how this works. It really comes down to more what door, because there are times where they do you want to go with this group to go through this door, or this group to go through the other door? And so depending on which one of those you go, that unlocks a path. Now the nice thing is that you do have a flowchart. The game provides a flowchart. There's 6 different endings. There's 3 common endings, and then 3 ones that you have to work for a little bit more. But the nice thing about it is that the flowchart, when I got through one ending, instead of having to replay the game all over again, which is what a lot of games do, which is frustrating, and if it would have asked me to play it all over again, I would have stopped there. I'm going to be honest. I would have stopped after my first ending and been like, well, whatever. But I don't have to do that. What I do is I pull up the flowchart and I load back at the spot where I have not seen that ending, and then I go from there. Now, on the more difficult ones, I did have to use a walkthrough, but that's mostly because there's 1 or 2 really small, non-intuitive things that you need to do to unlock the ability to follow the path for those endings. But that wasn't that big a deal. At that point, I was hooked, I was curious, I wanted to see the true ending, and so that's what I did. Overall, I really enjoyed this game. I would recommend this game. 12 to 15 hours is not bad. It does not fall into the same traps that some of the later Danganronpa games fall into, which makes sense considering that this game came out before the first Danganronpa, and I love the first Danganronpa. That game was, despite the insane premise, was much more grounded than the later 2 were. I hope that the sequel to this game stays like this original game was, at least in terms of its tone, and it doesn't get crazy and jump the shark the way the later Danganronpa games did. But I would definitely recommend this game. Y'all need to go check it out. It's on Game Pass, so it's not like you're dropping a load of money on it. And even if you were going to buy it and play it somewhere else, this collection, as best I can tell, has been out for 5 or 6 years, I think, because the sequel came out in 2012. So all of these games are old. So Go check this out. You're not going to spend a lot of money on it, no matter how you do it, and it will be well worth your money. Even if you only play the first one, trust me, it's worth it. It's worth your time. Y'all have a great day, and come back for more later. Give me a like, give me a review, give me a follow. Go check me out on TikTok. On TikTok, I'm also at Reviewing the Nerdy Things. We'll get shorter reviews. I stuff everything into 3 minutes most of the time. Every now and then, I'll have a hot take. You can check it out there. So y'all, give me a follow. Have a good one.